Hello and welcome to Tubonge Tax, the show that provides you with the tax information that you need to stay informed. I am your host, Alan Madoka. And in this very, very special Tubonge Tax episode, our first vodcast, I have some very special guests with me. We have Mr. Andrew Osiani, who is the Chief Manager for Stakeholder Engagement and Events Management at the Kenya Revenue Authority. And we also have Mr. Nixon Omondi, who is at the Policy and Technical Advisory Division, which is also, of course, part of the Kenya Revenue Authority. Now, in this very exciting episode, we're going to talk about the upcoming Annual Tax Summit 2022, which is the eighth such event to be held. Now, let me start with you, Andrew. Why does KRA host the Annual Tax Summit event?
Yeah, so the tax summit, 2022 will be marking the eighth tax summit. So that means we started in 2014. And 2014, this started as a conversation. We were looking for a platform for sharing ideas on how to improve taxation. And so that's how the tax summit came in. So the tax summit is one of Kenya Revenue Authority's prime stakeholder engagement platforms where we mobilize, policy proposals and ideas, on how to take the tax administration agenda forward.
Okay.
And we also do this with various stakeholders, international stakeholders. So it brings
Yes.
together the private sector, the civil society, bureaucrats, government, policy experts, the media, academia, and at times students, who have a lot to contribute on tax and customs issues. So we hold it, primarily for that. So essentially, it is a platform, it's an ideological platform.
Right,
That's number
right.
one, So it's an ideological platform in that that's where we exchange ideas and innovations in tax management.
Mhm.
It's also a skilling platform.
Yes.
And by skilling, we mean this is where we enhance the skills and capacity of tax professionals, to be better at what they do through knowledge exchange and networking. It's also a cooperation platform
Right.
where policymakers and bureaucrats and people who handle tax matters, cooperate to better understand what taxation is all about.
Yes.
And finally, it's also a diplomatic platform. It's
Wow.
a tax diplomacy platform
Okay.
because this is where, as a continent in Africa, we mobilize, our issues, especially around the rights to taxation
Mm.
and, the rights to tax as an African. Africa is ours and therefore it's our business.
Of course.
So
Of course it is. Yes. Yes.
this is the platform where we bring all our sister agencies from all over the world, especially in Africa,
Yes.
to talk about tax agenda or tax matters that affect us as Africans and speak with a single voice from there.
Okay. So it's actually bringing tax to relevancy and it's bringing it now to the forefront with the necessary experts and stakeholders. Wow. That's quite interesting, Andrew. Now, what has been the impact of the annual tax summit on KRA? I mean, what has been the progress on the implementation of the summit recommendations, which I'm sure there have been many over the years?
Yeah. So when we started in 2014, we started as a free discussion,
Right.
among stakeholders who work on tax issues. And at some point, especially from 2016, it started dawning on us that we need to be tracking what we are doing. Because when you have proposals, and ideas coming through all over the place, and then you end the event there and disappear, and you don't come back to, to take stock of what you're doing,
Right.
that will essentially make it useless. So what we decided to do from 2016 is to monitor some of the key things that are coming out of there, especially recommendations, policy and technical recommendations emerging from the summit.
Right.
And some of the things that the summit has given birth to are many. So, for example, when it comes to predictability of tax environment, which is a key proposal that came out from the last year's summit, one thing that has come of it is the national tax policy. Which
yes, very relevant. Yes.
exactly, because taxpayers are saying we want a favorable tax regime.
Right.
One of the ways of making it favorable is to make it predictable. So the
Exactly.
tax policy, being hosted by the National Treasury was as a result of this conversation. Two, it has also been very helpful in enhancing our service agenda.
Right.
This has been very important. you can see over the years we've really tried walking that service journey, and we have been trying to be more service driven.
Right.
So one of the things that came out of that was, for instance, the customer relationship management system,
Okay.
which we have right now,
Yes, yes.
where we have an activated frontline, that tries to sort out your issues and escalate those issues that can be sorted out to other levels, for maximum resolution, and we monitor that.
Right.
So that has been there. There have also been policy proposals around stakeholder communication and stakeholder relationship.
Yes.
We are so serious about this as an authority right now
Yes.
because we even monitor the health of stakeholder relations.
Wow.
Through stakeholder relationship health audits.
Right.
When we started, I think we were about 65%. Right now, we're at 67.5%.
Okay.
Meaning that stakeholders, find our relationship with them a bit healthy,
Yeah,
right? From
improved,
treasury to private sector and all these
Right.
people. We listen to them and all these things. But another key thing that directly affects the administration of taxes
Yes.
is through business process engineering and adoption of technology to make tax administration more efficient.
Yes.
So, what we've done in this space is to adopt cutting edge technology
Right.
to drive tax administration. So, in the customs front, you have the integrated customs management system.
Yes,
That is
ICMS. Yes.
exactly
Okay.
ICMS. That is
Yes.
now, really overturning how things work in customs and trade facilitation.
Okay.
Right now, there's a conversation going on which we'll be discussing around tax invoice management system, to help us also monitor real time,
Yes.
business transaction and the world of business commerce, so that we get the right type of taxes. So that has been there. But even internally, things like support, to revolutionize how our internal operations really work. So others like cargo scanning systems, customer relationship management system, and all these technological avenues that KRA rode into
Yes.
was a result of the tax summit. So there's a lot
There's a lot
that has
happening.
happened. This is just a few.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Now, Nixon, if I can jump to you, the theme of this year's annual tax summit looks at now and beyond enhanced service delivery to improve tax compliance. Now, with this in mind, what is the impact of modern technologies on enhancing tax compliance and maybe to some more importantly, tax base expansion?
Rightly put. And to pick it up from where Mr. Siany leaves it, when we talk of enhanced service delivery, what do we mean? We know that sometimes tax act as a pain. It's not easy to pay.
Of course.
But what the government is doing, and specifically KRA, is to simplify the process, to make it as easy as possible so that our taxpayers can comply. Because, of course, tax is a legal matter.
Yes.
All of us have to bear our fair share. But that said, we are also ensuring that everyone pays their fair share,
Right.
by leveling the playing ground for everyone. It wouldn't be fair if, my next door neighbor is not paying tax and I'm paying.
Of course.
So all the measures that we are putting in place to ensure that everybody pays their fair share, the process is also simplified,
Yes.
is what basically we bring to the tax summit. So we bring to the tax summit a host of conversations, not just within our country, but
Right.
beyond Africa, and
Yes.
of course Africa, because Africa, needs its own solutions to our unique situation. And you've seen a number of times we bring in speakers from Africa,
Yes,
and
all
also
over,
from
yes.
outside the country, just to have a conversation on where the world is going to. This summit is important in also looking at the disruptive effects of digitalization and
Yeah.
COVID.
Which
We
is
know
it's a
that,
very current issue. Yeah?
Very, very current,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
when you look at digitalization, right from the time internet, started to be used in Kenya in
Yes.
the early 90s and even before, it changes a lot how we do business. It isn't business, the processes. And Mr. Osianya has mentioned the effort that the authority is taking to ensure that paying tax is simple, the process is verifiable, the process is very clear,
Yes.
and is also predictable.
Right.
Again, if you look at the disruptive effect of COVID, We know that COVID has affected a lot of supply chain methods, and it has even affected how we live our lives, how we do certain businesses. So it's only fair that even our taxation follows that kind of disruptive channel, not to overburden our taxpayers, but also to ensure that we don't lose, the much needed revenue that the government wants. So this tax summit, I'm sure, will live to that dream, where we share experiences from the taxman and what we are doing to make our lives better, to ensure that the government meets its mandate through taxes, but we also share experiences from Africa and beyond.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Nixon, I think I have a very tough question for you, and you've alluded to it in your first answer. In terms of tax simplification, I'm sure everybody watching Tubonge Tax and listening to it today wants to know what specific mechanisms has KRA put in place to simplify tax and tax processes, as you talked about earlier.
Very true. For tax experts, they understand a canon. It's called a canon of taxation,
Right.
by Adam Smith, that a good tax system must be simple. Simplicity involves simple to understand. The common mwananchi must understand the basis of payment,
Right.
and how to pay it.
Right.
2, the process of payment should also be simple enough for anyone sitting at the comfort of their homes,
Yes.
to do comply.
Right.
So KRA is approaching the simplification in 2 fronts.
Right.
1, we want to simplify tax to our citizens.
Okay.
We want to educate them. We want to organize forums, including the summit, where we tell them, this is the tax.
Yes.
What is it about? What is it? How do you go about it? That is the simplification. So you've seen we've done a lot of course, we are doing podcasts.
Yes.
We are having tax Thursdays. We are having, there are a lot of time you see our own CEO, this Commissioner General, appearing on TV to clarify certain tax matters,
Right.
together with many other, tax experts.
Yes.
So we have
KRA TV, they
KRA
recently launched
TV,
KRA
which we've
TV.
recently launched it,
Right.
so that we specifically harness tax knowledge,
Yes.
and make sure it flows to
All the
the
way to the
common man.
ground.
So that is the first point. The other one is simplification through processes. And thanks to technology, we are able to simplify the process of registration.
Right.
And I don't know how many were there before iTax. It could take you weeks to even get a PIN.
And I think I even remember you used to have lines outside
Yes.
of Times Tower, and I remember every year, actually, in the newspaper, that was a common picture
Actually,
of lines outside Times
The
Tower.
news would
and
have been how longer the line
how long
was
the line
compared
stay.
to the previous
And
year.
actually, this year there's nobody, and that's all.
Sure.
As you say, through
So
the advancements of
that
technology.
is part of the simplification.
Right.
In fact, somebody said that
Yes.
for customs, before the regional electronic
Yes.
cargo tracking system,
Yes.
you would have 19 kilometers
Yes.
of trucks,
Yeah.
lining up for clearance at the border.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now with technology and the simplification of these processes, that's
Simple.
a story of the past.
Right.
Simple. In fact, again, in customs, there used to be called the long room
Yes.
before the Simba. And it was actually long because you needed not less than 17 signatures to clear your goods. So we are coming from,
manual processes,
certain processes that
Yes.
were not very friendly. So we are putting in place the ICMS,
Yes.
the cargo electronic tracking
Right.
systems.
Right.
Mr. Osian mentioned about the tax invoice management system.
Yes.
A system that will enable our citizens
Right.
to even verify if the good is genuine. If I sent Ellen to go and buy, a certain part of a motor vehicle, for example, from a shop,
Right.
I'm able to verify that indeed that invoice is from that shop simply by using the QR code and the KRA iTax system,
Yes.
which is accessible so long as you have internet.
Okay.
And it's also ensuring that people pay their fair share.
Yes.
Because we are able to only give input where we have actually received
The money.
equivalent, and many other benefits that come with the tax invoice management system.
Yes.
So there are many systems we are putting in place.
Right.
We even have a system for whistleblowing.
Right.
Yes, you can.
I whistle.
iWhistle.
Yes,
You can easily report incidences of tax evasion
Anonymous.
anonymously.
Anonymously, yes.
Yes. And of course, you are rewarded by law. So this is part of the simplification.
Right.
So that everybody pays their fair share, but they don't belabor to pay it.
Yes.
They pay it in a simple manner,
Right.
in a very friendly environment. And of course, we've also had a culture change.
Right.
The simplification comes with the culture change from the employees. You can always walk to any KRA office,
Yes.
and the officers will give you an ear to all your queries, will guide you, and will not charge you even a shilling. And that's part of the simplification.
And actually, before we move on to the next question, I see you even incorporated sign language interpreters as well in most of your major offices as well to include, to be inclusive.
Very important.
To members of people living with disabilities.
Very important, because
Yeah.
these are people who are able differently.
Right,
And
right.
and we need to take care of everyone,
Absolutely.
including language barriers. We are even
Absolutely.
trying to translate our website and a lot of our documents to Kiswahili.
Right.
So that the mama mboga and my mom at home can always read
Right.
and understand what Alan is also able to understand in English.
Right.
That is the
What we call it
simplification.
assisted channel
Yes.
service,
Yes.
where, well, another thing that is happening is the self-service. I mean, driving
Sure.
taxpayers to the self-service options, where we have USSD, iTax, and empowering the taxpayer,
Right.
to comply, and of course compliance through payment and declaration. So filing and payment of taxes on your own.
Right.
So
right.
through USSD, and
Right.
our systems have been integrated with the telecoms, major telecoms in the country,
Yes.
just so that your payment of taxes is easier.
Yes, seamless.
But also the assisted service channels, like the contact center right
Yes.
now. We have a national contact center as KRA, but
Right.
then this is being expanded,
Yes.
know. So we are having additional channels,
Right.
that will be able to serve taxpayers. So, for example, WhatsApp for business,
Yes, yes,
that's
yes.
one consideration we are having right now.
Okay.
Maybe just to add on to what Nixon was saying,
Yes, please do,
that
please do.
another way of simplifying taxes is making it easier for the citizen to hold us to account
Right.
Very true.
on payment of
Accountability,
taxes,
yes.
not really on use. I mean, of course, KRA's mandate ends with collection.
With collection,
but
yes.
in terms of use, so we even commission annual customer satisfaction surveys,
Okay.
where we ask the
Right.
citizen,
Right.
what do you think about us as KRA? How did we serve you in the course of you making you comply with taxes? And the reason why this is important, Alan, majority of a voluntary compliance model, majority of Kenyans actually comply with taxes. And anytime you have an enforcement issue, it only happens with a very few,
Very small
minority at the
number.
top. Those ones who already know, but they will not pay, can't pay,
Can't
won't
pay,
pay.
won't pay, yes.
Catch me if you can.
Right.
Okay?
And unfortunately, those are the cases that the public hear about.
But they tend to be louder
Of course.
than the
Than
guys
the
who actually
compliant.
Compliant and
with
paying.
payment of taxes.
Yes, yes.
So, of course, these ones, of course, there's another way of enforcing a payment of taxes on
Yes,
them. But
yes.
majority of Kenyans, we actually interact with them, and we give them a chance to hold us to account
Right.
on how we serve them through customer satisfaction service.
Yes.
So maybe, Alan, before we move from the simplification,
Yes.
it will not end without telling our taxpayers
Right.
that we are also bringing in an app.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, we are all going up. So you want to do your banking, you want to do
Everything.
your shares,
Yeah, mobile economy.
mobile,
yes.
and you have your app and you can view.
Right.
So that is an option that we are soon availing for our taxpayers to simplify the process of compliance.
Okay.
But even beyond the app is just as Andrew is saying, we want the self-service from the
Aspect.
taxpayer,
Yes,
so
yes.
that you do everything on your own.
Right.
We are only there to guide you where necessary. And that's why we've issued a lot of guidelines. If you go to the iTax system, just the portal itself, you're able to get all the guidelines step by step. How do you do a PIN? How do you file a return? How do you pay? All those guidelines are available. And I think it would be good so that our taxpayers make use of those guidelines. You only, you can contact us when you are stuck. But basically, it's a self-service model.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I think simplification also leads to the expansion of your tax base. So that actually leads me to my next question. What mechanisms has KRA put in place to enhance the tax base? I know it's been talked about frequently. So maybe if we can briefly talk about what mechanisms are there specifically to enhance the base so that more people pay their fair share.
Very important.
Yes.
And we cannot talk about enhancing without maintaining the already existing base.
Right.
So what we were discussing before in terms of simplification and people complying is ensuring that the existing base is generally compliant, the 80% we are talking about.
Yes.
So to ensure that we get additional revenue,
Yes.
because as we all know, that government expenditure keeps increasing by year because of the demands of citizens. So we also need to be innovative and in a way that doesn't affect our taxpayers adversely, but they comply.
Right.
So one of the means is ensuring that all property owners, whether you have a residential property or commercial property,
Right.
you pay your fair share.
Yeah.
So we are having a block management system. We are having a team that is ensuring that all property owners, shoulder their fair share of tax.
Right.
We are also cognizant of the effect of digitalization and the digital economy.
Okay.
So we are also enhancing that tax base by not just, ensuring that our own players in the digital space pay their fair share, but even non-residents who interact a lot with the economy also get to pay tax. And that's why you saw the government introduced a digital service tax,
Right,
VAT
right,
for
right.
non-residents.
Yes.
And coupled with that is the issues about voluntary compliance. It is just a matter of ensuring that everybody, if inadvertently you do not pay your share, your taxes, you can come forward, pay, and we give you reprieve for penalties and interest. And it's by law and unequivocally you get the waiver.
Right.
So there are many mechanisms of expanding that tax base. Of course, we also have legal means. You always see there are goods coming into the exemption list, some leaving,
Right.
but depending on the direction that the government is taking and the economic policies.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nixon. Andrew,
But maybe just
Right.
also, I mean, just to add on that, we also focus on taxation of the informal economy.
Yes.
Very important.
Yes,
And
yes.
His Excellency, the President, recently challenged Kenyans and said, he leads by example
Right.
to ensure that everyone pay their taxes. So if at all a Kenyan, who's making a living, one of the ways of showing responsibility on this is just by paying taxes.
Paying the
So
taxes,
bringing as
yeah.
many people as possible into the tax net. And informal economy in Kenya, is one critical base
largest,
that
Very,
we are targeting.
very.
And also there's a current technical debate going on around digital service tax.
Of course.
So
Yes.
and himself is the brainchild here. I mean, so this is another way we are trying to expand the tax base. And of course, through the tax summit,
Yes.
we have had discussions about this with the OECD.
True.
Where this was discussed. And we are saying, as a country, we are not signing into the statement on the inclusive framework
Right.
until we are properly heard. Okay? And one of the reasons why we are talking about that is because it has taken us time to get DST into the tax net,
Right.
and we will not just lose it like that. I mean, it's not
We'll-
about taxing
yes,
rights
right.
that we are focused on in the tax-based expansion agenda. So these are very critical, ongoing issues. Of course, data analytics
Yes.
is
Yes,
another
very
way,
important.
even through using third-party data, to help us collect taxes,
Okay.
because we still have very rudimentary data, and we are working so hard as an authority to ensure that our data, is enhances compliance.
Right.
In other countries, I was telling somebody that in Norway, for example, they give birth to taxpayers. They don't give birth to children.
Right.
No,
Right.
because they give birth to you as a taxpayer. So
You get a pin immediately
so
on birth.
it's like you get a pin immediately at birth. So maybe
Wow.
we get to that point as
Yeah.
a country someday and say,
As soon as you're
we'll
born,
give
you get
birth.
your pin. Yeah.
Exactly. So you see somebody expecting a child and say, that's a taxpayer coming, and we
Yeah.
start planning
True.
for him right from Nixon's office.
True.
And also I hear with the implementation of tax education within the education, the formal education system.
Very important.
That,
Yes.
that will also nurture people
Of
into
course,
thinking about.
yeah, of
thinking
course,
about taxes.
integration of tax, education into the national education curriculum has
Yes.
been very important, because we want to create a taxpayer
Awareness,
right from
right.
school, where we say now that we don't give back to them, we are saying
Yeah, from where they're
that
learning.
from a young age you need to know that paying taxes is a patriotic
important.
duty.
Yes.
We don't want you to meet that kind of information in university or at your workplace,
When you
so
start
that you
working, yes.
voluntarily, pay taxes. And to that front, I mean, we have several tax clubs. We also have centers of excellence in tax education. You know, Kanga High School and so many Kieni Girls High School and the rest across the country, whose primary responsibility is to act as our tax education resource centers.
Right.
You know, on the ground, working in conjunction with our regional offices.
Okay. Now,
Alan,
yes.
before we leave there,
Right.
you know, they say after the discussion on taxation of the digital economy, we cannot have it without looking at the informal economy.
Yes.
We know the level of informality, especially Africa, I think is leading, then Asia. And that shows you that a big number of businesses are actually trading in the informal economy.
Of course, yes.
So we can urge our taxpayers in this forum that come forward and pay your fair share. But above that, we are also working on mechanisms to harness the revenue without adversely affecting the businesses of those mamambogas, the hustlers. And what I wanted to add, there's also conversation of merging all these documents under the Huduma number or something like that. And we believe when there's that single identifier to taxpayers and citizens, sometimes it also leads to enhanced tax base, because there are people who are hiding behind, you know, the
multiple documents,
not to come forward and pay their fare.
Right.
Above that, I also see a lot of discussion in the global arena on how taxes can be used to enhance climatic issues. We know the emission of carbon, you know, the greenhouse gases,
Right.
and the use of carbon credits and taxes. So I think that is a discussion that is coming. And most likely we'll hear it in the summit.
Yes.
And it's important for Kenyans to know that taxes, there are a lot of incentives in the tax laws, so that we use clean energy. And that means maybe if you're emitting a lot, then you might be paying higher tax than those who are emitting little. So it's also important to note.
That's a very important issue. Now we lead to the next question, Andrew, which is change. And I know His Excellency the President, and as well as his predecessor and many others have mentioned the word Kenya Revenue Service and the transition from the word Kenya Revenue Authority to Kenya Revenue Service. Now, how does this transition from KRA to KRS affect or change how the current KRA will administer their taxes?
Now, first of all, revenue administration or domestic resource mobilization is the topmost economic priority of any government.
Right.
And if you look at our 8th corporate plan, we not only call it transition from KRA to Kenya Revenue Service, we actually call it transition from KRA to KRS, not only in name, but also in service.
Right.
You know, in service delivery.
Right.
Because, you know, you can transit. I mean, I can declare you Alan Madoka. I can declare you Alan Madoko. I've just changed A and O. So even then, I mean, you can have an agency there, but then only remove the A and replace it with an S and it's KRS. But does it mean that things are changing? So for us, this is a service journey.
Yeah.
And if you look at our summit on day 2, we are hosting a very critical public lecture by Professor Anderson from Leiden University. He used to be in the OECD, and he was one of the people who contributed the seminar work on how to create a tax administration 3.0. What that means is how to create a modern tax administration.
Right.
And the lecture is actually titled Transformation on Stilts, you know, towards tax administration 3.0. What does that mean? It means transformation, quick transformation in response to service needs of the people.
Right.
Now, one of the biggest motivations for this transformation is to conform to global best practice.
Okay.
You look at tax administrations globally. We don't want to be left behind. You know, I think for Taxpayers Month, leaving no one behind.
Leaving no one behind.
We also don't want KRA to be left behind in transformation. So we are looking at how do we conform to international best practices in tax administration.
Right.
By the way, this has already started in some form or shape. And a lot of our work within the authority, you know, mirrors that. If you look at our people perspective, so the work around transformation, I mean, there's a whole project, and we've subdivided into 5. And if you look at customer, so what we're trying to do in the customer perspective is to create a delighted taxpayer. It's very hard to create one. Nobody is ever willing to part with money
Of course,
to pay
of course,
taxes.
yes.
But we want you, even if you may not feel really pleased, but we want you to be convicted and be happy to pay your taxes.
pay
So
your
how do we mobilize a proper service infrastructure
Right.
that will lead to you being a delighted taxpayer?
Okay.
Then, if you look at people perspective, we want to create, a people, a service culture in the people who collect taxes
Right.
in our people. Well, even in the Bible, I mean, tax collectors were revered. They were not really liked. But we are trying to say
Yes.
we are tax collectors. We relate with people. We work for the economic good of the country. How
yes.
do we do it in a humane way?
Right.
So we are trying to create service-centered people, and a culture of high performance. And that is
Right.
already going on. In fact, I think we are the only government institution right now, for example, that integrates integrity, into what they do in government. The only one, Alan, by the way. And we don't apologize for it.
No, of course not.
And if you look at things like performance management, performance management culture in tax administration, evidence-based performance management
Yes.
culture in tax administration, where you look forward to a reason to go to work.
Right.
So we are trying to create a staff culture, that is service friendly, that is performance driven and all that. If you look at business processes, we're also trying to change that perspective so that our processes are more efficient, so that we have a 360-degree view of you as a taxpayer.
Right.
So let's say you import goods from the US. We can see you both from a customs and a domestic taxes perspective. So that's what technology and BPR is trying to help us do. But again, in the policy and legal, we're also sensitive about our brand. So we are trying to see, are we, will you love our brand? What are we doing about our brand love? Because
Right.
you don't just change a name. There are a lot of legal things, intellectual property
lot of
rights, and all
things,
that.
right.
But identity of KRA will also be very important. So, to be honest, there's a lot that's already working across all these processes internally, even though we are not yet KRS.
Yes.
KRS will find us on the journey of transformation, which has already started. But we are basically changing ourselves, along those 5 perspectives.
Okay.
True, Alan.
Right,
I
yes.
think what we are doing by this change of name is really entrenching what we have changed as our practices, our culture, and the processes.
Already,
We
yes.
want Kenyans to be proud of their revenue authority. From the first time you look at our logo and the KRS,
Yes.
you are proud to be associated with the revenue authority.
Right.
From the point you get into Time Star building, you are getting into a government facility.
Yes.
That meets your demands.
Yes.
That is able to serve you.
Yes.
And you get you get what you went to, you've gone to look out for.
Yes.
That's basically the transformation that we talk about.
And you see, globally, just to revisit this customer conversation.
Very quickly, because I think
All right,
time
I
is
think
almost
this is the
up.
second last. Oh yeah. Anyway,
Yes.
most brands talk about customer obsession.
Yes.
So we want taxpayers to get to a point where they're obsessed about paying taxes.
Yes.
Like it happens in Sweden. They look forward to paying taxes.
Right.
That's what this transition and transformation journey aims to achieve.
Okay.
Sure.
So, lastly, Andrew, what is KRA looking forward to gain from this annual tax summit? Before I let you go.
Well, that's a simple question. So this year's tax summit, I mean, the topics are there. What you want to do, one, we want to get insights on how to best improve compliance,
Right.
by making it tax driven.
Okay.
So our focus will be on technology for VAT.
Right.
How can technology enhance compliance in value-added tax?
Okay.
Value-added tax compliance. We will also be very keen on looking at data and the role of data and analytics in entrenching compliance. So these two are more or less the risk-driven tax compliance agenda. Then finally, we'll also be looking at customs administration in a global age. So what's the role of customs in supporting business in international commerce today? So we look at, with these issues around war in Ukraine, and COVID, post-COVID, what can customs do to reduce disruptions of value chain? And a very interesting final topic around integrated border management. How can customs, through integrated border management, support legitimate trade in Kenya for enhanced domestic revenue mobilization? So actually, for me, these are conversations we look forward to.
Wow, amazing, amazing, amazing. And indeed, we'll be having a lot more of these conversations on Tubonge Tax and through various channels, including KRA TV, to our audiences out there. Thank you so much for joining us on Tubonge Tax, Andrew Osiani and Nixon Omundi. And I wish you a very happy Taxpayers Month and a productive
We
month
welcome
ahead.
our viewers to we welcome you to the Tax Summit, where knowledge meets practice.
Absolutely. And did you know that the 8th Annual Tax Summit is happening on the 12th and 13th of October 2022? Well, don't miss out. Now you can register today for free on https summit.kra.go.ke. That's summit.kra.go.ke. I've been your host, Alan Madoka, and this has been Tubonge Tax. And until next time, goodbye.